Hi everyone. I'm going to do two different journeys here today. One into Jesus Christ and the other one into Legion. I wasn't going to do a journey into Legion, but I was brought up and I've been thinking about it, and maybe it's time that I do. It's not one of those things that you look forward to, but it's like one of those things that you feel like you must do. Like, I've done some pretty hardcore journeys into very difficult situations, and mainly just to help, to see what I can do to change some form of perspective. But Legion is a many demons merged into one. You could say it's like fragmented versions of very powerful beings that has shut off aspects of who they are, that they no longer want to deal with or no longer can deal with. So they shed them off, and it becomes, this demon was created. So I want to go to Jesus first to get his perspective on wherever he wants to share, but also the perspective on demons, their roles, and what can we do as a society to change the direction of these beings, to help those beings. Like, one way to cure chaos is to send all the fragmented souls back to the original souls. But what happens if those souls aren't ready for it? They're going to reject them again, which would make things, doesn't really change it. Chaos is extremely difficult to deal with because of that. Because you're not dealing with one entity, you're dealing with trillions of entities of fragmented parts that were shedded off by trillions of beings. So to heal that is impossible. To know what chaos wants is impossible, because you have 1,000 trillion different versions of souls that have no idea what they want, or they want something different. Could you imagine being in a room with 100,000 people that want a different outcome and try to come out with an outcome? The pure definition of chaos. Because you know what the outcome, and they're all pissed off and grumpy because they've been shut it off and neglected and basically left to die in forever torment. But they never die. That's the problem. So the idea of healing chaos is simple. In actual action, it's almost impossible, because every single part has to be transformed and sent back to the original source. And people will reject, most of them will reject them. They're not ready to bring that part back to themselves, even if it is balanced. It's complicated. And also, every one of those parts need to have some form of themselves that want to come back. And some parts are very, very small, very insignificant. So the life force of that being is very minimal. I could go on and on and on about trying to explain the definition of chaos and how to heal it. That's not what I came here to do today. And it's Easter today. It seems that we grew up with many holidays, and they're all under attack. And the idea of making things equal. Equality, inclusion, they call it. But is it equality, or is it just stamping out the culture of another society in order to please another society, which then isn't pleased because there's another society that doesn't like that, or another culture, you could call it. Culture is a beautiful thing, but when you got one culture trying to snuff out another culture because they disagree with it, that's when the problem starts. Big problem starts. In Canada and the United States, we have a culture. It might not be as in depth in lore and history as other ones, but we all come from another part that has another country that has very deep culture and beliefs. So when we came here, we have a specific thing. I remember growing up in the 70s and 80s and looking at what happening now would never have even thought of or occurred to people at that time. Equality is important, but equality is never going to be a reality if we continue to snuff out another culture. It's interesting that as a white male, you could say that you could look at me as specifically as a specific thing. But it's interesting because I'm not racist. But just being a white male, I am racist. That's what people say. But the reality is that they're the ones that are racist, that are calling me that, because I'm not. It's very interesting that the white people can only seem to be the ones that are racist, but any other color of skin cannot be. That alone is ridiculous. And it's actually very concerning. Equality is the only way we can move forward, that everybody's treated equally. Everybody has the same rights. When you put one person or one movement up here and everybody else is down here and they get all the benefits and these people don't, it's not fair. It's not inclusion. It's actually the opposite. It's like when you force a specific person up here based solely on their color of their skin. How does that make any sense? You want to rise in society, as you could say you want to get a better job, then you earn it. Period. If you don't, you stay here. If you want to, you can rise up. Doesn't matter the color of your skin. What the problem is when you got people that don't do that, specifically, they're the people you deal with. They're the people you bring. Give them a reality check. Hold them accountable. But holding everybody accountable simply because of the color of their skin is ridiculous. And anything under 18 shouldn't be making any life-changing, altering decisions. If you think otherwise, then, well, we need to change the laws, don't we? But changing the laws into kids making life-altering decisions is ludicrous. We all know it. You imagine a 14-year-old making a decision, a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old making a decision that will completely change their life permanently. And people say they know. Come on. We need to stand up for what's right, not for what's popular in the moment. Anyway, I'm getting off topic, but maybe this is part of the things that are coming through right now because it's something that's always on my mind. Everybody's has to be treated fairly, equally. But it's funny, nobody wants that. Oh, I want that. A lot of people don't want that. It's easy to say everyone, but it's not what I meant. There's a lot of people that want equality. But there's a lot of people that don't, because they want to be in control. And when you want to be in control of someone else, that's not equality. That's not fair. That is completely the opposite of what it's supposed to be. We need to hold the people that are creating the problems accountable. For instance, if you're a racist, if you're a bigot, if you hire people specifically, but it's funny because you could go to specific places And this is one of my biggest pet peeves, is if you're a white male and you own a business and you hire only white people, then you're racist. But if you're another culture and your whole business is full of that same race, you're not a racist. Like, you don't have to be a fucking genius to see how ridiculous that is. And you could call anything you want in history. You could go back and say blah, 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 blah. History is written by the people who wrote it. What actually happened is completely different. And we all know it. And I'm not responsible for other generations' decisions. No matter what people think. How am I responsible for that, making them? And some people say, well, you're supposed to live your whole entire life trying to stop racism. Spoken from a racist themselves. Really? I'm going to listen to a racist? No, I'm not. And that could get you in trouble by calling somebody a racist when they're a different color. It's just, if you're racist, if you look like a duck and act like a duck, you're a duck. Anyway, enough of that. It's just equality, people. We need to look at each other as equals. That's what's important. And that's what we need to push for, in my opinion. Am I allowed to have my opinion? Lately, it seems you can't have any opinion except what is popular in the moment, or you're going to be ripped apart by a bunch of lunatics. Because anybody, like I said before, that wants to destroy your life because you disagree with them are not okay. And they should never be a leader. So that's 12 minutes of me ambling about stuff. So let me just see what Jesus has to say. I have a scale in it's like my arms are a scale, and I have weights in one hand and the other. And they want me to keep things in a balance when one's full of feathers and one is full of gold or rocks, whatever you want to call it. It's heavy. Gold is dense and it's heavy. And so how am I, like, you're trying to keep it in balance, so I can move my arm up to try to hold it. The feather's easy and I'm holding this. But is it realistic? How can I continue to say that this is the same weight when one's 100 pounds and the other one's 2 pounds? Or a pound even. So you keep adding weight to the one side, but you have to keep it balanced. Well, you can't. Eventually your arm is going to give out, and there's going to be a massive, fast shift. Because when your arm gives out, your arm's going to drop. The one with the feather is going to stay the same. But the one with all the weight on it is going to drop, and it's going to drop hard. And not only that, it's going to take a long time to recover. You simply just can't go put your arm back up and, drop all that weight and try to keep your arm up. Even at that point, your arm's exhausted. It's going to take a long time for your arm to heal. You might even tear your arm. You might even break it. You might even tear ligaments. There's going to be damage done to it. And all in what? To try to say that something is imbalanced when it's not. It's like society right now. We're all living in an illusion to say that things are balanced when they're not balanced. There's stuff going on that's creating a massive weight in people's hearts, and if we continue to think that it's in balance, then there's going to be a serious crash, and we're going to be hurt by it. And it's going to take time to recover. This is the scene that Jesus shows me, the very first scene I come into when I go to visit him. He appears now. He's looking down at the ground, and the ground under his feet is cracking. And he looks at me because he knows the ground is glass. Now, is he even going to be able to reach me? Because if he's walking on basically broken glass or cracked glass, eventually that glass is going to give way. So he says, you could look at your neighbor and say your neighbor is walking on glass and you're not even realizing it's cracking underneath them. And the floor gives way, and I reach down and I grab him by the arm and I pull him back up. Would you do the same thing if your neighbor fell through the floor, as just in perspective falls, crashes? Would you actually help them back up, or would we just watch them fall and just ignore it like they never existed? I actually pull him beside me. I said, you know, Jesus, it's a hard thing to answer. It really makes you think, though, because back when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, that wouldn't even have been a question. It would have been instantaneously yes. But now, because there's so many things going on in your life, I guess it depends on what and who your neighbor is, doesn't it? Do you even know your neighbor? Like, if it was a friend, it would be like absolutely yes. But if somebody, a perfect stranger, would you help them? And the question is, if you did help them, what would they do? Would they rob you? Would they murder you? And these are the things that are implanted in our minds, the distrust of everyone around you, the distrust of people. This is what is being put in your mind. You can't trust anyone anymore. Because the reason is because people are becoming untrustworthy. They're only becoming one of themselves. Like, I'm going to go, if there's ever a serious event, I'm going to be the one that takes over everything. And I'm going to shoot and kill everybody in my sight and take everything they have. This is what's being programmed into us. Not banding together and working together. It's always, there's not enough food to go around, so we're just going to have to just let some people go. In some cases, we might even make them dinner. We might even become cannibals to survive. Instead of working together to try to fix things, which in most cases, people get together, enough different people, enough different ideas can actually basically combat almost anything. But when you're fighting against each other, not trusting each other, you won't be able to survive. Eventually, one person that's the strongest might live a very long life. What type of life would that be when you live your life alone? Not trusting anyone. Killing and murdering just simply to take food off another family's plate. Not caring that when you leave that they're going to starve to death. It doesn't bother you because you got meal for the next day. What type of society do you want to live in? This is what Jesus asked. A society that actually, when your neighbor falls, you just simply help them. Bring them back up. Help them out. There shouldn't even be a question. Because of the programming in society now, we're taught to only think of ourselves. How many movies that you watch that when, say, something happens in the world and society starts to crumble, that we all turn into a bunch of raving lunatics? And there's a couple of good people, but they struggle horribly, and usually if they're very, very loving, they'll be killed off right away. And only the ones that are willing to sacrifice everything are the ones that survive. When did it ever become a weakness to be good, loving? We're actually taught that. I'm not saying never fight back, never defend yourself. This is not what I'm saying. but actively seeking people out and killing them simply because you want to take their food from them. Wouldn't it be better if you didn't have to do that and you could just simply band together and everybody uses their mind and their knowledge, their wisdom, the compassion to work together to help everyone out? Like, really think about this. Wouldn't it be good if parts of society crumbled? I'm not saying good, but wouldn't it be better if parts of society crumbled that we actually band together to rebuild it? Instead of breaking everything down that's left to the point where there's nobody left except yourself. It would be nice if we would actually stand together against the things that are wrong and simply just stand together, but hold people accountable for when they do something heinously wrong. Instead of just sticking your head in the sand, locking yourself in your house and not worrying about what's going on when there's people dying and being murdered in your streets and you got metal bars and metal doors and you're trapped in your bunker. Not caring about anyone and anything and dying of old age or dying of eventual over time. Never really truly living your life. I don't know. So it's like, I guess the thing that I'm asking Jesus is that I understand all this stuff, but is something going to happen in the world? And he says something always happens in the world. And the simplest things can turn into a massive deal very, very quickly. If people don't work together in harmony, not in destructive, he's saying people need to start trusting each other again. But the people that are going out and doing these things need to be held accountable. When you have a society that stands together for what is right, when somebody steps out of line, they're dealt with. It doesn't mean you put a bullet in their head. They're showing the errors of their ways. And if you don't want to live in that society, then you have to go somewhere else and live in another society that maybe is more in line with what you believe and what you want and what you do. Why would you stay in a place that you're completely against everything you believe in? Maybe the things that you believe in are contrary or maybe not in line with very many people. So maybe you'll be living your life alone. But wouldn't it be better to live your life alone than murdering and killing people just to get your own way? Maybe that's the thing here, is that when a person is so obviously different, then what do you do with them? If a person rejects everything that in the society that you're in, do you change your society in order to please that one person? No, you do not. Because if you change society based on one or two individuals in your society, then that creates an imbalance in the society itself. And usually creates hatred towards the people that are trying to make the change. Work with the people. Talk to them. But if they're still unwilling to accept, then that is on them. And they have to make a choice whether or not to leave or stay. But they don't have the right to tell everyone else around them how to live their life because they are different. You have the right to go and do wherever you want. Then do it. But why would you go into a place expecting everyone around you to bend towards your will, when majority of the people do not want to bend in that direction? And then calling them all kinds of names, trying to destroy their life. because you simply want everybody to be just like you, or to accept you for being so different. Maybe you should do the right thing and either accept people's choices or go to where people will accept you. And if you can never find that, then maybe just go somewhere alone. Wouldn't that be better than trying to destroy lives and just destroy whole cultures just simply to please yourself? But then you never will be pleased, because if there's an imbalance in yourself that you're unwilling to allow to change, and you try to mold everything around you, you're never going to be happy. Even if people bend to you, you're always going to want more. You're always going to want to push things farther and farther and farther. When you look at chaos, it's never going to be full, because there's too many versions of people inside chaos that want a different thing. So they're never going to be happy, and everything is angry. So it's always starving. No matter what it devours, it's always going to be starving. Because part of it might be satisfied, but all the other parts are not. So it tries different things and different things and different things, and never ever truly be able to stop that hunger within themselves. So society has to work together equally, not as separate. Society is about a group of people working together to try to better each other's lives. Not one individual telling everybody else how to live their life. And if we don't change the understanding of that, if we don't stand up for what is right, then once the last, you could say, block is removed from the bottom of the wall, eventually the wall is going to collapse, because it's already being, and you keep pulling blocks out from the bottom, the whole wall is going to collapse. Your arm is tired to the point where it will fall, and all that 200 or 300 pounds will come crashing to the ground with your hand underneath it, because you can't let go of the weight if you insist on saying that it's the same as feathers, blindly accepting it that way. Your arm will be crushed, ligaments torn, bones broken, and then you'll have a long time to heal, and maybe never heal completely. There'll be always reminders of that. But sometimes when we fall really hard, the scars that still remain are the ones that keep us from doing it again. So when you look at society, and you're an individual that is always about equality and peace, but there's others that do not see the same way you do. It hurts, it's painful. You see how easy solutions are, but if you're not the one making those decisions, you have to live within the decisions that others make. But if those decisions are creating a major imbalance in society, and we just allow it to continue, I'm talking about the majority of people, then everyone will suffer. So we have to learn to use our hearts over our minds. We have to pick up our neighbors when they fall. We have to speak out when things are unjust. You have to praise when people do things right, not criticize them and throw them aside. It seems like things are changing in the opposite. When you're a good person, you're ridiculed as a bad person. But when you're a bad person, you're ridiculed as a good person. We all know that's happening. And if we don't stand up to change it, then we will be blindfolded and our hands will be tied behind our backs and we won't be able to do anything at all. And we would have to live in the confounds of that for the rest of our life. Because once that happens, it's going to take a long time to change it. But if we stop it from happening, it would never have materialized in the first place. That's Jesus' message. I mean, with you can take that and do with it what you will. It's just an interesting, we all know what's truth and what isn't. We all know what's right and wrong. But everybody's afraid to say anything. Because if you say something, you could really get yourself into trouble. But that's the one thing we have to do, is stand up for what is right. To speak out when things are, they're not right, they don't smell right. So we got to stand up and say something. Because if we don't, the things will continue to change to the point where we won't be able to do that even at all in our lifetime. I'm just kind of thinking about some stuff. It's pretty crazy when logic is turned upside down, isn't it? When what's right is now wrong, and what's wrong is now right. It is like everything is flipped upside down. But this is the time we need to stand up as people in a loving way to support each other. So when all races and all colors need to come together as equals. There's a certain amount of people that want to divide people by race, color, religion, culture. But this is where we need to reject them and embrace each other's culture, religion, race. To work together, not trying to snuff out each one, but look at it. It's funny. I love culture. I love creativity. I love people that are different. Because that's what makes the world an amazing place. If we were all the same, it'd be pretty bloody boring, wouldn't it? It's when people think they're better than others, when they try to control a population because they're different, is what's wrong. Look what's going on in Africa, the Middle East, Asia, Europe, North America, South America as well, but it's not as loud. I always say, wouldn't it be amazing if we all worked together in science and love, creativity, the things that we could accomplish, the things that we could do. Borders were created for separate us. The borders don't exist. Only the ones that we created. When I think of a world that worked together in peace and you could go anywhere in the world you wanted to protect areas that need to be protected, but also be realistic about it. There's so many things when you just sit and think of a world that was at peace, where people would actually support each other and there would be no poverty. But it's like the problem right now is that you're taking the working class and making them pay for everything, and the people that are rich and the people that are poor take everything from the middle class. That's the problem. It should be the middle class continues to be middle class, and the upper class just pays for most of everything else, pays for all the poor people. And I don't like to use poor. I was fucking poor, man. I said that a lot of times. When I was growing up, there was no white privilege for me. I worked hard for everything. Sometimes I could have worked harder. And because of that, I'm where I'm at right now. I'm not poor. But I'm definitely not rich. I'm rich in other ways. But that was my choice. Because like I said before, my mom worked as a waitress with 5 kids by herself. She was married when she was 17. She had to give up everything to get married. She never had an education. She ended up getting sick. So it's like everything I did, nothing was given to me. I had to pay for everything. I was working since I was 11 because my mother couldn't afford to give me anything. She always made sure there was food on the table, though. She was an amazing woman, very strong. And no matter how much she suffered from cancer, she always was strong in that. Always tried to be strong in front of all of us, even though we knew that how much suffering she was going through. There's a lot of respect for my mother. There's no privilege there, though. I had to pay for all my schooling, had to pay all my student loans off. My sister helped me out a little bit because I was going 2 or 3 days without eating. Hats off to her. I paid all the money back she gave me in time. But without her help, I wouldn't have been able to get through college to get my degree. The privileged people would steal my food in the cafeteria because I couldn't even afford to get a goddamn fridge for my room. It got me a bit upset, but at the same time, it is what it is. I just worked around it, just kept going forward. You can go 2 or 3 days without eating. It's not fun, but it doesn't affect you in any way. It actually makes you stronger. So you see, not all people are privileged. And privilege can be in any race and any color. I think it's society that we grow into that gives us privilege. Because I had the opportunity, even though I came from a very poor family, I had the opportunity to get a job at a young age, to be able to go to school, to take your school seriously so you can get into a college or university. get an education, then go out and get a job. A lot of times you start off a job as a regular worker and you work your way up if you want to. And you work your way up into that company. And there's times that you're overlooked for somebody else. You suck it up, and when the opportunity comes again, you try again. That's what you do. I understand that in certain places of the world, people don't have those opportunities. But that has nothing to do with being white. In Canada, especially PEI, where I grew up, which is 90% of the population was white, if not 99% when I was growing up. However, in certain parts of the United States and certain parts of the world, there would be privilege there. Advantages. I never experienced that. And I think it's important to understand that Canada and the United States offers the opportunity for everyone to succeed, but you have to work hard for it. You have to try. You have to take risks. God, I took a lot of risks. A lot more than most people would have in their lifetime. I moved to 3 different places. PEI to Vancouver to the Yukon. And it's almost like in every one of them was a whole lifetime in itself. It feels like I lived 3 lifetimes in one. But I liked it because it gives me perspective on different places in Canada where to live. It gives me an opportunity to understand the different areas. Like PEI is all beaches and waterways, and it's a smaller town. And you go to Toronto, which is obviously the biggest city in Canada by far, and there's a different perspective there. There's different cultures there. Way more than there is in most places in Canada. Then you live to the Yukon, which is a totally different place to live. It's not for everyone. There's beautiful mountains, access to Alaska, BC, Alberta. Some of the most beautiful places in the world. Some of the most isolated places in the world. Some of the coldest places in the world. But it's just life, man. Life takes you to where you want to go, and you chose to be a white person, a black person, a Hispanic person, Asian, European. You chose that body. You chose that life. So embrace it wholeheartedly within your own heart, within your own mind. Embrace it. Be the best you can be in this lifetime and help your neighbor. Help them be stronger. Stop trying to look at people and criticize people. Break them down because they're different. Listen to what they have to say. I think I noticed that when you start listening to people and why they are the way they are, you start to understand things a lot better. Instead of just saying, oh, well, blah, 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 without actually even truly listening and talking to a person about their culture, you learn a lot. And you become a better person because of it. I love talking to people about their culture because it gives you an understanding of why things are the way they are. Like, why do East Indian families have that structure? Like, I had lots of Italian friends and the way they grow up and the way they do things. Like Filipino friends as well. It's like I could go on about all the different friends over the years that I've had. It's funny because one of my friends in elementary school was one of the few black families in PEI. I'm not exaggerating. There was only maybe 2 or 3 families in PEI. There was a lot of Lebanese, though, which was also friends as well. And it's an interesting thing to not see color. Never even occurred to me growing up. Kids don't see color. We, as older peoples, we learn to see color. I don't want to see color. I want to see a person for how they act and how they treat me. And if they don't, why? What is it that I'm doing that's offensive? You start to learn things about yourself. I've talked to a lot of East Indian people about their culture because it's very diverse in India. Very diverse. Every little part in India is different, right? It's actually, I like listening to all the different gods, all the different religions, and also why their family makeup is the way it is, and what's the benefit of that. We'll learn a lot. And like the way I grew up as alone and blah 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 is just what I was dealt and what I want to experience. But I see the value of working together as a family unit. There's not perfect. There's some issues that I would be like, wait, I don't know if I could do that. However, I can see the value in it. It's working together to accomplish things in life that as by yourself is almost impossible. The value of looking after your parents when they're old. To living together and then buying houses and moving in along the line. You could go on and on and on. And I think, to me, what I'm trying to say is beauty in differences. If somebody disagrees with you, talk to them about it, because you might learn something that you're doing that you might be stupid. Oh, fuck, I didn't realize I was doing that. Better change that. I'll work on it. Might not happen right away. It's when you want to be offensive that something seriously wrong. When you do it by mistake, this is a big one. There's times where you say things because you're born with it, or you grew up in the 70s and 80s, that was accepted back then, and you might blurt it out by mistake. Is it offensive? It could be considered offensive, but is it meant to be offensive? That's the big one. And my answer would be no for myself. I don't purposely be trying to go out and crush people and to be offensive to people. And sometimes you might want to look at yourself and say, why are you so sensitive about things? Because growing up in the 80s, you had to deal with it. You learned to deal with it. If somebody offended you, you dealt with it because it was part of life. People are going to say things you disagree with all the friggin' time. When you try to create a society around not offending someone, now that's ridiculous, because you get 1,000 people in one room with all difference of opinions. Try to come up with not offending anybody. Because right now, being on social media in the world, you can say one thing and you're going to offend lots of people. But how you react to that's important. If you attack the person because they get offended by it, then that means you got something that you need to deal with. Attacking people is doing the same thing that you said they did to you, you're doing back at them, which is not correct. A lot of the times it's simply just, well, was it offensive? Yes. Was it against me directly? No. Was it meant to be offensive? I don't know. Because I didn't see color growing up. Still don't. I'm forced to sometimes, though. I would wish we would just stop using negative context to specific races of people. Like I always say, I'd rather just go with culture than color of your skin. What do you do with all the people that are mixed? We're all mixed of something. If you fool yourself, you'll be surprised what you're mixed with. It'll be the funniest thing in the world if you got this racist asshole going on and on about how he hates a specific race of people, and then he does a DNA test and finds out that he's more that race than he is the one he says he thinks he is. Man, that's karma for you right there. That would be pretty funny. And that should happen more often. Maybe we'll get rid of a lot of the bigots in the world. A lot of the hypocrites. Anyway, guys, ladies. I think I said enough. And the next one, I'm going to do another video, and I'm going to put part 2 to it. Well, I'll just call it something else. And I'm going to do a journey into Legion. This history between me and Legion. I know that. But again, when you're being called to do something inside yourself, and there's a part of me that doesn't want to do it, but then I ask myself, why is there a part of me that doesn't want to do it? And that makes me want to do it. Because there's something inside myself that's saying, okay, why is it that I don't want to do this? I only know a lot about that specific being. I don't particularly like Legion. But maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe there's something that it's calling me to help it in some way. And I call it it because there's so many versions of people that are trapped inside of it. It's really hard to say that it's he or she when it's not. It's everything. There's a lot of things inside of Legion. Like I said, I done journeys into Lucifer and to Auschwitz and places like that. They're never easy. But you learn something from it. Or, to me, more than anything, is to try to heal it. Try to heal the energy, to transform it. But that's not easy to do. And I'm only allowed to heal what I'm allowed to heal inside of something. My soul will never allow me to do something that is outside of the realm of okay. That's the importance. When you do a healing on a specific being, you have to honor your soul understanding of what complexities that entails. There's no way your mind, like me as Joseph, would understand the complexity of healing Lucifer, for instance, or healing Auschwitz. It's not something that I myself understand, but my soul vastly understands way more than I could ever imagine. And that's when you have to set your ego aside and allow your higher self to take over, to allow your higher self to get the help from other beings to take over. And that is what the importance of journeying is. You cannot use your physical mind. You set aside your physical mind to allow your higher self to be able to navigate through the complexities of every situation that you're going through when it comes to journeying. Then you'll be amazed what you can accomplish. As human beings, we put way too many limitations on ourselves. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.